The Galactic Cadet Games were supposed to be a celebration. 17 species. One neutral station orbiting the dead star of HFY. Young soldiers from across the interstellar compact competing in trials of strength, strategy, and endurance. All in the spirit of unity, diplomacy, and the careful theater of peace. Nobody had told that to the Vorai. Cadet Joe noticed the blood first. She was crossing the lower observation deck of Station HFY when she smelled it. Copper and salt, the unmistakable iron perfume of a wound. Joe stopped walking. She tilted her head the way humans did when something ancient, an animal inside them, whispered danger. Her squad was nearby. She knew their positions by instinct the way she always did, the way her drill sergeant back on Luna Base had beaten into her until it became reflex. Me was 40 meters northeast, in the sparring prep bay. New York was beside her. Die, high, and we were in the common quarters. Joe broke into a run. She found me on the floor of the prep bay, curled against the wall with both hands pressed to her side. New York crouched over her, small blue fingers working at a field dressing, 4 of New York's 6 eyes wide with panic. Me was Chirath, reptilian, bronze-scaled, normally unshakable. Right now her scales were dull, and her breath came in shallow gasps. What happened? Joe's voice came out flat. Not scared. Flat. Vorai, New York said. The word landed like a stone dropped into still water. 3 of them. From Compound 7. They said Me was using the training equipment out of rotation. She wasn't. The schedule was open. They just... New York stopped. Her translator clicked. They heard her, Joe. Joe looked at me. At the gash across Me's ribs. At the way Me's hands were shaking. How bad? Cracked secondary rib plate. Internal bruising. She needs the med bay. Get her there. Now. Joe was already pulling her comm high. Die? Prep bay. 5 minutes. She didn't wait for acknowledgement. The Vorai were large. That was the first thing most species noticed. 7 feet of dense gray muscle, 4-armed, with skulls that sloped back at a predatory angle and eyes set wide for prey tracking rather than depth perception. They were from a world with 1.4 standard gravity. They were built like something designed specifically to break other things. They had also, evidently, decided that the cadet games were a fine opportunity to establish dominance early. Joe knew their type. She had grown up with their type. Different species, same psychology. Find someone weaker, make an example, watch everyone else fall into line. It was ancient behavior. Humans had invented it. Humans had also spent 10,000 years learning how to end it. She found the 3 Vorai in the arena's public warm-up ring, 2 hours before the formal opening ceremonies. They were there loudly, making noise, performing their size for anyone watching. The largest, Joe mentally tagged him Compound 7 Alpha, was running through a striking pattern with the casual arrogance of someone who had never once been made to feel small. Joe stepped into the ring. The arena went quiet by degrees, like sound draining out of a room. Human Cadet, Alpha said, without stopping his pattern. This ring is occupied. I see that, Joe said. I'm here to file a formal complaint through the compact grievance process. She held up a datapad. On the screen was the incident report New York had already filed. Station security stamp. Timestamp. Medical confirmation. Clean, documented, official. Alpha stopped his pattern. He looked at the datapad. Then he looked at Joe with the expression of a creature that had never once needed to think about consequences. That complaint, he said, is going to disappear. Interesting, Joe said. She set the datapad down on the ring's edge. Then she looked at Alpha with the particular expression that humans made when they had already run the entire scenario in their head and had stopped feeling anything about the outcome. I'm also here to challenge you, she said. Under Article 9 of the Compact Games Code. Personal grievance trial. Witnessed combat. You hurt a member of my squad. I'm invoking it. A murmur ran through the growing crowd at the ring's edge. Alpha stared at her. His 2 right hands flexed. You are a human, he said slowly, as if she might not be aware. Yes. You are smaller than my forearm. Approximately, yes. And you are challenging me. I am challenging all 3 of you, Joe said. Sequentially. Per Article 9, Subsection 4. Grievance extends to the entire acting party. The crowd went very still. What the Vorai knew about humans, they were soft. They were short-lived. They were emotional. They were the youngest spacefaring species in the compact by 400 years, and they had arrived loud and messy and full of opinions. What the Vorai did not know about humans, they had spent the entirety of their short, loud, messy history fighting things larger than themselves. Humans had no claws. They had no armor plating. They had no venom, no echolocation, no electromagnetic sense, no pheromone communication. What they had, instead, was an absolutely unreasonable willingness to get back up. And they had Joe. The first Vorai lasted 4 minutes. Joe moved the way her trainers had taught her, not to overpower, but to redirect. Let size work against itself. The Vorai strike came down like a hammer. Joe stepped inside it, used his own momentum, and put all 280 pounds of him into the mat with a sound like a bag of wet gravel hitting concrete. She did not celebrate. She stepped back. She waited. The second Vorai lasted 7 minutes, because he was smarter, more cautious. He circled. He tested. He made her work. She took a hit across the shoulder that went instantly numb and would bruise spectacular colors by morning. She took it and she kept moving, because pain was data, and humans were very good at processing data mid-crisis. And 3 minutes later, she found the angle she needed and she used it. He went down hard. She stood over him. Waited. He did not get up. The crowd around the ring had grown. Species she recognized, species she didn't. All of them silent in the specific way of witnesses to something they had not expected. Alpha had watched all of this. His wide predator eyes tracked every movement. When Joe turned to face him, she saw something there she recognized. Not quite fear, but the biological cousin of it. The recalibration that happened when a creature suddenly understood it had misjudged. "You don't have to do this," Joe said. Her voice was steady. Her shoulder was still screaming. "You can yield. Walk away. Let the complaint process stand. Nobody else gets hurt." Alpha looked at his 2 squad members, both down, both breathing, but finished. He looked at Joe. He was still bigger. He was still stronger. He was still from a 1.4 gravity world, and she was from a species that had only recently stopped riding animals for transport. He stepped forward. Joe exhaled once, slow and complete, the way Hai had taught her. Hai, who meditated every morning and said that stillness was the sharpest weapon, and then she was moving. The fight lasted 11 minutes. When it ended, Alpha was on the mat and Joe was standing, and the arena was silent in the way that meant every witness was committing this to permanent memory. Dai found her at the medic station afterward, getting her shoulder looked at while she finished the formal documentation on her datapad. Dai was Veshan, small, silver-furred, with enormous dark eyes that missed nothing. He sat beside her without speaking for a long moment. "Mi is stable," he said finally. "She wants to see you. I'll go when they're done here." Another silence. The station commander is calling it an unprecedented use of Article 9. It's in the code. 3 consecutive challenges. They didn't think anyone would actually. Dai stopped. His fur shifted colors the way it did when he was processing something large. "The Vorai delegation is requesting a diplomatic review. They can have one," Joe said. "The documentation is clean." Dai looked at her for a long moment. At the bruise blooming across her jaw. At the absolutely undisturbed expression on her face. "Joe," he said, "were you afraid?" She thought about it honestly, the way she always did when Dai asked her something real. "Yes," she said. Before I stepped into the ring." She set the datapad down. "Not after." Dai was quiet. His fur had gone a soft silver gold. "Hai says humans are the only species in the compact that makes fear smaller by walking toward it," he said. Joe almost smiled. "Hai's not wrong," she said. "Now come on. Take me to me." She stood up, rolled her injured shoulder once, winced, and walked out of the medic station into the corridor where Wa and New York and Hai were waiting. Her pack, her people, all of them together. Behind her, the arena stood quiet. It would not forget what it had witnessed today. Neither would anyone else.